Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 24th of February of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. Today is the 24th of February, which means that it's already 3 months has passed since the beginning of the special military operation. 3 months has passed since the beginning of the greatest war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine itself. Obviously, those 3 years were very important for both sides, and both sides during those 3 years suffered a lot of losses, a lot of vehicles, a lot of soldiers, a lot of tanks, a lot of aircrafts, a lot of missiles, a lot of bullets, a lot of destroying towns. Everything was too much during those 3 previous years. And when talking about the Russian side, today they were trying mainly to focus people's attention on the patriotic things. The Russians were showing different videos of the beginning of the special military operation. Today the Russians published a lot of articles about the Gostomel offensive operation, when the Russians managed to cross almost the entire Ukraine and to take under control the northwestern part of Kyiv agglomeration. We're talking about the city of Gostomel and Gostomel airfield. Today the Russians were talking a lot about Istanbul talks, when the Russian Federation and Ukraine had almost signed peace agreement, but later something went wrong and Ukrainians left that peace talks and that peace process. Today we got a lot of different statements and a lot of talks from the Russian side about capitulation. The Russians recently have begun talking a lot about capitulation, but telling the truth, as for now, I don't see any capitulation that is going to take place in the very near future. When talking about the Ukrainian side, Zelensky chose completely different approach. Today he decided to call as many as possible politicians from all over the world. For example, the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, arrived in Kyiv. He met with the second person of Ukraine, Andriy Yermak. Also, we have the Lithuanian and Latvian presidents. We have Estonian Prime Minister and we have Spanish Prime Minister that came together with the Prime Minister of Canada. Also, we have video where we can see the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and European Commission Council President Costa when they arrived in Kyiv. So he managed to collect a lot of people. He managed to collect a lot of people, and as a result of this summit, as a result of these talks, Zelensky managed to force these countries to give him a lot of money and a lot of weapons. Billions armored vehicles, sanctions. The European continues to sponsor the Ukrainian conflict. At the summit to discuss support for Ukraine, allied countries announced new aid packages. Canada will send 25 infantry fighting vehicles, 4 F-16 simulators. Britain will allocate 5.6 billion for military support. Norway will send 3.5 billion in aid to Ukraine in 2025. And many more different things that European countries promised today to Zelensky and to his power. Furthermore, according to information we have during the day, we got a lot of very interesting statements made by European politicals. For example, the head of European diplomacy, Kallas, stated that the European Union supports Zelensky's refusals to hold elections. Obviously, this is something strange that we might heard today during the previous 24 hours. For example, the Danish Prime Minister stated that she believes that Ukraine is better off continuing the war with Russia than agreeing to peace. I have to be honest, I don't trust Putin. I don't think he wants peace in Ukraine. Many people might think a peace agreement or a ceasefire is a good idea, but we risk that peace in Ukraine could actually be more dangerous than the war that is going on now. So that was stated by Danish Prime Minister. Obviously, this is also something weird that we managed to hear today. Another funny case took place today in Ukraine Parliament. Today, the Verkhovna Rada, the Parliament of Ukraine, under the European Commissioners, failed to vote in support of Zelensky, collected only 290 votes. The Verkhovna Rada was unable to collect the required 226 votes for the statement confirming that Zelensky should perform his duties until new president takes office. Obviously, that was the strangest things that took place during the previous 24 hours. Of course, as usually, Zelensky tried to make this as much as powerful. We're talking about event, lots of people, lots of statements, lots of money, lots of weapon. But when getting deeper into details, of course, I would like to point your attention to several important things. First of all, today, Ukraine didn't visit for the most important people. We're talking, of course, about Donald Trump. There were no even a single statement about his attention or his attitude to this situation. Basically, he didn't arrive in Kyiv. Obviously, he was invited by Zelensky, but he refused to go there. Furthermore, we didn't see the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, on the same event. And according to information we have today, Emmanuel Macron arrived in Washington, where he was going to talk with Trump. So-called French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived at the White House to meet with US President Donald Trump. According to media reports, Macron and other European leaders will do everything they can to stop the de-escalation between Washington and Moscow and push the US to deepen in its involvement in the proxy war against Russia. So basically, like simply saying, he came today with the purpose to force Trump to continue supporting Ukraine. Furthermore, when talking about the United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he also didn't come to Kyiv today. I'm not sure what exactly he was doing. According to information we have this week, he is going to visit Washington as well with the purpose to discuss the situation with Ukraine with Trump as Emmanuel Macron. But as for now, he didn't visit Kyiv and he wasn't in Washington as well. Furthermore, the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, also didn't visit Kyiv. Of course, yesterday he lost the elections in Germany, and he's no longer Chancellor of Germany, and obviously he will be replaced in the very near future by Friedrich Merz. But neither Friedrich Merz nor Olaf Scholz visited Kyiv as well. So we see that there were lots of people in Kyiv, but there were the most important people that supplied and supported Ukraine in the past since the beginning of the special military operation. It's very difficult to understand the real reasons. We see that every single one of them found some reason not to visit Kyiv, but as I understand, these four leaders decided not to visit Kyiv because they understand if they visit Kyiv, by these actions they will legitimate Zelensky and they will legitimate him as a president. I believe that both the UK Minister, France President, and a German Chancellor, of course, and the President of the United States of America don't think and don't recognize Zelensky as the legitimate president, and they want him to begin elections. So this is the situation. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. We have lots of very interesting updates, and first we're going to talk about the Sudzha direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the area of Sverdlikova. Basically, today we got the first geolocations that confirm the Russian presence in the most western part of the settlement of Lebedevka. This is very important. Yesterday we had reports that the Russians managed to do this, but yesterday we got just statements from different reliable sources, and today we got the first geolocation, which means that the Russians most likely entered Lebedevka yesterday or the day before yesterday, and as for now, the Russians most likely are about to finish the battle for this settlement. If Ukrainians lose control over Lebedevka, then this is going to be the beginning of the end of the entire Sudzha direction for the armed forces of Ukraine. They will not be able to hold their positions. Furthermore, during the day, we got a lot of very interesting articles and statements made by different mappers, by pro-Russian military experts, that indeed the Russians continue their offensive operation in the area of Zhuravka. Today, several sources reported that there are very heavy clashes for the northern part of the settlement. Furthermore, the source reported that the Russians continue their pressure towards the settlement of Novinka. And of course, as we discussed a minute ago, the Russians continue offensive in the western part of Lebedevka. So summarizing everything, we see that currently the Russians are trying to improve their positions inside of this red line. And if the Russians are able to do this, this will shorten the distance, as we discussed for many times, to the main supply road to 3 or 4 kilometers, which is going to be the beginning of complete encirclement of the Ukrainians there. Furthermore, today we continue receiving reports mainly from pro-Russian resources and from the official Telegram channel of the Group of Forces North that the Russians managed to finish or about to finish the battle for the settlement of Kurilovka. As for this direction, the main target of the armed force of Russian Federation is to take under complete control everything that is located inside of this red line. If the Russians are able to improve their positions from the area of Sverdlikova and from the area of Kurilovka to these both red lines, then this is going to be complete encirclement for the armed forces of Ukraine, and up to 10 or 15,000 of Ukrainians would be caught in cauldron, which is obviously can turn into complete disaster for the armed forces of Ukraine. But you know that the most interesting that during the previous months the Ukrainians were talking a lot about the lifting of some mobilization age and many other things to improve mobilization process. But telling the truth, we stopped receiving anything about this. Something happened and something changed from Ukrainian side, and we see that according to information we have, they are no longer planning to reduce mobilization age or to increase mobilization. At least Ukrainian authorities stopped talking about this. Now let's move further. And let's discuss the situation in the northern Kupiansk area. Today, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the units of the Group of Forces West managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Topoli. So this village was completely colored in Russian favor, and now the Russians are going to move further inside of the settlements by the name of Stroivka, that is located along the border, and of course the Russians will try to attack the settlement of Kamenka. Kamenka is a very big village in this area, probably the biggest village, let's say, along the border with the Russian Federation, and if the Russians are able to take the settlement under complete control, then the Russians will have a full-scale foothold on the Ukrainian side, and this will allow the Russians to continue advancing further in the direction of the city of Volchansk. Anyway, I believe that before the end of the special military operation, before a truce, before peace agreement, everything that located to the north of that red line would be captured by the Russians. At least we see that the Russians are doing everything to do this. As for the central Kupiansk direction, the Russians are about to finish one of their goals, one of their tasks of the special military operation. You know that the Russians' main tasks is to take under control the territories of Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporozhye, and Kherson regions. And when talking about Lugansk region, there are just 2 settlements left for the Russians to take this region under complete control. We're talking about the settlement of Grekovka and the settlement of Novoigorovka. So just 2 settlements left, and the Lugansk People Republic will be 100% under complete Russian control. So most likely the Russians, just to achieve at least this media victory, will focus in this direction during the next several weeks, just to have another task to be completed. As for the Sivers direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians continue publishing different updates and information about the Battle of Bilogorovka. Today, more resources confirmed that the Russians managed either establish complete control over the settlement, both establish complete control, and to move a bit further deep inside of the Ukrainian territories and to get as close as possible to the settlement of Grigorovka, which is the next area on the line to the settlement of Serebryanka and then to the settlement of Siversk. According to different military experts, the Russians are going to move along the river of Seversky Donetsk with the purpose to flank the city of Siversk from the north and from the northeast. And of course, we should expect the activization and intensifying of Russian activities to the east of Siversk in the area of and the settlement of Verkhnykamenska. Now let's discuss the situation in the Chasiv Yar and the Torez directions. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions, and something tells me that the Russians are about to announce that they managed to take the city of Chasiv Yar under complete control. We see that Ukrainians are losing the ground, and telling the truth, Ukrainians can't stabilize the situation. Furthermore, they can't do this without US help and US support. Furthermore, according to information we have, and as you know, today the United States of America took a decision to close another military base on the territory of Greece, which is a very important chain in the entire Ukrainian logistic. If US close this base, then Ukrainians will have the problems of the armed forces of Ukraine in Ukraine itself will just increase, and this is the process that is currently taking place. So the Russians are about to finish the battle for the city of Chasiv Yar. The Ukrainians try to slow down the Russians Russians, but we see that it doesn't work. Now let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. As for this territory, there is another crisis area because there are lots of problems. Now the Ukrainians, instead of let's say building defenses somewhere along the river of Dnipro, try to create some defense belts around the positions of the armed force of Russian Federation, and of course this situation leads to significant losses. Today the Russians published another video on how they were hunting and destroying vehicles, engineering equipment that Ukrainians were trying to use to build trenches in the fortifications and dragon teeth. So obviously this is not very smart to build trenches so close to the Russian positions from one side, and from another side this also means that there is nothing behind these lines. As for the Bogatyr direction, today the Russians managed to improve their positions between the settlements of Andreevka and Alexeyevka. According to different sources, this dense network of the fortifications was captured by the Russians. Furthermore, according to different pro-Russian resources, the territory between the buffer between Constantinople and the settlement of Ulakli was also taken by the Russians. Currently, everything that located to the east of this red line is already under complete Russian control. Most likely tomorrow, different mappers will adjust the map and we will do the same. As for the South Donetsk direction, we see that Ukrainian lines collapse in this area. We see that Ukrainian defense maybe collapses as well. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly. The Russians captured several true lines, fortifications. We have geolocations also that confirm additional Russian progress on the ground. This video was published by the 141st Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russians' positions in this area. Based on this video we have adjusted the map. Most of the mappers did the same. So you know that the Russians during the previous months, days, were attacking the Ukrainian positions mainly through the fields. For example, the distance between the settlement of Niskuchny and the settlement of Privilye is already 8 kilometers, and the Russians during the previous months were focused to cross the distance. And now we see that by the end of the 24th of February the Russians finished this task, and now they're about to enter the settlement itself. We need to understand one thing: as soon as the Russians enter villages, enter the settlements in this area, the tempo of their offensive will just increase, because it is much more easier to attack when you have some floors, buildings, constructions underground. Not just fields, not just tree lines. And this is the most important. As soon as the Russians are able to take under control these, let's say, three settlements we're talking about, Borlatskoye, Privilne, and Vilny Polne, if the Russians are able to do this, then their offensive will just intensify, and they will be able to take much more territories and much more settlements, let's say, during days, weeks, or something like this. So as for the Zaporozhye direction, most likely we are going to see the second battle for Zaporozhye, which is going to take place probably in spring or summer of 2025. But this time we're going to see the Russians in offensive, and the Ukrainians will try to slow down the Russians and not to allow them to take the city of Zaporozhye. But I'm not sure right now that Ukrainians are able to do this. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.